Hey neighbors, Brent here coming to you from the Porch. Today I'm on the back porch of the Woodlands campus over here by Wesley Hall. I've chosen this place because here at Wesley Hall is just a portion of what is deconstruction, what is the demolition process that's happening over on this campus. We are taking down things that have been there and replacing them with new things. Of course, over on the Woodforest campus, we just started from scratch with an empty pallet. But I've been thinking a lot about deconstruction, taking walls down, removing those things that get in the way of the children of God being together, the people of God appreciating one another. If you were in worship this past Sunday, you'll recall we studied the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a guy who built his own walls by the profession that he had, his willingness to be unkind and unfair to the people around him, to be a traitor of sorts. But when Jesus encounters this guy, Jesus shows up, finds him, asks him to come out of a tree, and then invites himself over to his house where he could spend some time with him and maybe get to know him and maybe show compassion and love to him. Thinking ahead to this coming Sunday, we're going to be dealing with a parable that Jesus told of a Pharisee and a tax collector who each showed up for prayer at the temple, but they were separate from one another. In fact, the Pharisee, it says, was over by himself, saying a prayer that would lead others to believe that he was too good to be in the presence of the other people at the wall. And then the tax collector at the far end, all by himself, beating his chest because he had come to believe that he wasn't good enough to be in the presence of the others, and maybe not even in the presence of God. He found himself begging for mercy from God. What is it about this practice of the faith, this children of God, this community of us, that we would choose to be separate rather than together, to set walls in between us when we could be building bridges? I was reading on social media this week, a young lady that was in one of my student ministries years ago has been over in Belfast, and she reminded us that there is a literal wall built between the Protestants and the Catholics. And I think to myself, what is wrong with us? What is it about us that long to be separate? Are we scared of one another? Do we need to protect ourselves from one another? Do we need to keep the riffraff out? This past week, I had the great opportunity. It was so humbling and quite an honor. Greg Johnson, my good buddy who pastors Restoration Church there in our community, he invited me to spend some time together this week. In the morning, we started on our campus, and he and I walked the campus. I kind of pointed around things, told him what we were doing, what we were building, how our ministries were going to be set up, and then prayed together over at his campus. We went to Restoration Church, where he and I had the opportunity to walk around his building, and he was able to show me the way that building is set up, and the wonderful ministries that we were imagining together are going to take place. And I thought, you know what, this is what the kingdom of God is supposed to look like. And I was so grateful that Greg reached out to me and set up this opportunity for us to be together, because we really are better together. If you think about the synergy of the Christian community, if he and I are both leading Christian communities in the same direction, both unfolding the goodness of God in the midst of the people around us, both encouraging followers of God to become more closely following Jesus, his son, that the kingdom might actually grow faster if we do this stuff together. And so I want to encourage you this week, if there's people that you've separated yourself from because you don't feel good enough to be in their presence, or you've separated yourself because you think you're too good to be in theirs, you somehow set up walls instead of bridges because of the fact that people believe something differently than you believe or vote differently than you vote, I want to encourage you this week to shoot that person a text, send that person an email, unless you would cause further harm to them by doing so. If you could show an act of compassion, of generosity of spirit, I want to encourage you to do that. We're going to spend this Sunday talking about how do we do that better. How do we find ourselves in the presence of God, in the presence of one another in ways that build the kingdom? That's what we're going to talk about in church at 9:30 and 11 there at Stewart. I hope you'll plan to be there with us. You know what? I'm going to take a big step this afternoon. I'm going to go have lunch with a good friend of mine who's a Baylor Bear, and of course, I'm not. But we're going to have a great lunch together, building bridges instead of walls. You do the same. See you Sunday. God bless you. Bye-bye.